she's a cook and not a chef?
Because I don't know if she's a cook or a chef.
Then why don't you say something? You speak and you don't know what you're saying. You're the most unintelligent human being I've ever had the pleasure to be around.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you have the worst vocabulary. Jill showed up to look like Mom.
Bethenny Frankel. For years, the name meant hustle, ambition, and a reality TV fairy tale. She went from being a scrappy New Yorker with big dreams to a household brand through the Real Housewives of New York City and her skinny girl empire. But behind the public image of success lies another story. One marked by lawsuits, charity controversies, bitter custody fights, and a pattern of behavior that critics say proves her downfall was inevitable.
Go to sleep! You're crazy! Go to sleep!
Calm down.
All of a sudden, I was like in a straitjacket and Ramona's like talking me down. I'm girl interrupted. She's like, okay, I know you're going through a rough time. Tell me who told you I would put you in the press.
No, I'm not going to.
So in what
publication?
In what publication?
What are you doing right now?
I'm responding to something that you've said. You can't just say things about people and have them not
do you want to talk to the people that you were working with last year and talk to them about, what you were doing and how you were putting things in the paper?
The people and what I was doing?
I don't know.
It's quite okay. That's fine, Bethany.
Hi, pretty bird. Really, you have psychological and emotional problems, and we're all talking to you as if we're going to make some sense out of this, and it's crazy. We're doing what we do. Yeah, why are we even... Perfect.
In this story, we'll follow the paper trail and the public record. We'll look at court filings, trademark disputes, business exaggerations, and the PR stunts that backfired. We'll trace how Bethenny turned wins into headlines, but also how her missteps piled up until her reputation began to crumble.
That's
what they told you would happen.
Well, hold on. I said to you, Ramona,
that was hearsay. Telephone.
You seem to be very defensive.
No, because I don't like when people make up stories about me.
I'm going to tell the story. And if you want to walk outside and fix your dress or cool your pits, you could do that. But I'm going to tell the story to this group who's listening. Do you adore me and you're sorry? Do you adore me and you want to apologize and you were wrong and you really owe me an apology? Off. Not connecting. She's not getting it. She hears I say something. I don't know what translation it goes through to get to her, but she...
Expect legal documents, exposed feuds, and social media outbursts. And by the end, we'll answer the hard question. Was Bethenny Frankel's downfall truly deserved? Bethenny Frankel's rise is undeniable. She first appeared on The Apprentice Martha Stewart in 2005, hustling her way into the spotlight. But her true breakout came with The Real Housewives of New York City. On Bravo, she stood out as sharp-tongued, business-savvy, and always ready with a soundbite. Her defining move? The creation of Skinny Girl. What began as a low-calorie cocktail brand exploded into a business empire. In 2011, she sold Skinny Girl cocktails to Beam Global for a reported multi-million-dollar deal, a sale she promoted heavily in the press. Suddenly, Bethenny wasn't just a reality star, she was proof that housewives could be entrepreneurs. From there, she launched spin-offs, talk shows, books, and later her Be Strong charity, which gained praise for fast disaster relief efforts. Bethenny had built an empire, and with it, a powerful image of a woman who outworked, outsmarted, and outlasted her peers. Bethenny Frankel's personal life quickly became another chapter of public spectacle. Her divorce and custody battle with ex-husband Jason Hoppy turned into one of the longest, most bitter courtroom dramas in Housewives history.
Housewives of New York star Bethenny Frankel is locked in a nasty custody battle with her ex-husband. Usually these things are kept quiet, but this reality star's emotional fight with her ex is being played out in public.
Bethenny Frankel wipes away tears after giving testimony in her bitter custody battle with her ex.
It's great to be successful.
The Real Housewives of New York star took the stand today. She's seeking full custody of her 8-year-old daughter, Bryn. Frankel testified that her ex, Jason Hoppy, was emotionally abusive.
The custody litigation dragged on for years, with multiple public hearings covered by New York tabloids. Court filings revealed accusations flying both ways. Bethenny alleging controlling and harassing behavior from Jason, while Jason's legal team painted Bethenny as unstable and manipulative. The details were messy, often ugly. At one point, the judge himself criticized the toxicity of the proceedings, noting the damage to their daughter caught in the middle. Media outlets picked up every filing and headline, turning private family pain into a soap opera for public consumption. The impact? Bethenny's once carefully curated brand as a savvy mompreneur began to erode. Sympathy that might have existed early on was diluted by the sheer length and bitterness of the fight. What should have been a private matter became another public drama. And instead of elevating her, it added to the perception that chaos followed her everywhere. Bethany's legal entanglements weren't limited to family court. In 2018, she was hit with a federal lawsuit in Manhattan that struck at the credibility of her philanthropic image. A professional photographer accused Frankel of posting one of his copyrighted photos from Puerto Rico, an image taken during Hurricane Maria's aftermath, without permission. The photo had been used on Bethany's social media accounts to promote her Be Strong charity work. The lawsuit, filed in federal court, alleged clear copyright infringement. The complaint stated that Bethany and her team used the image to bolster her charity branding without paying licensing fees or crediting the creator. On paper, it may sound like a simple intellectual property dispute, but the optics were terrible. Here was a celebrity running a high-profile relief initiative accused of exploiting another person's work. During a disaster, for her own image, critics jumped on the story, calling it tone-deaf and hypocritical. Even if the case didn't carry the same emotional weight as custody drama, it chipped away at the polished humanitarian image Bethany tried to project. Instead of headlines about helping survivors, the story became about a lawsuit.
I was saying, so now it's Puerto Rico. What do I do now? What do I do now? And this was the hardest one for some reason because people were saying, you can't go there. People can't drink the water. And I'm saying, well, that's why I have to. What do you mean? Oh, let's just sit home and, eat some bonbons and watch people die. And so then I said, well, I'm going to get a plane. I got to get a plane. And then how am I going to fill the plane? I was going to go to a store, but that's not a plan. And I became just motivated and could do it. And I was watching change. And then someone said, I see what you're doing. I have a plane. And then I would start talking to people. Don't call me if you don't have a plane. If you don't have a, it felt like my social life.
Bethenny Frankel's charity arm, Be Strong, has been praised for stepping in during disasters. But its name landed her in a different kind of spotlight. A pre-existing organization also named Be Strong came forward claiming they had prior rights to the name. They argued that Frankel's use of the branding confused the public and stepped on their established identity. Trademark complaints like this are civil matters, handled by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and the courts. Still, the issue wasn't just legal paperwork, it was public perception. A savvy businesswoman like Bethany, who made her fortune on the Skinny Girl trademark, was now facing questions about how thoroughly she vetted her own charity branding. For critics, it raised eyebrows. Was Bethany rushing to slap her name on relief efforts without due diligence? Was this about helping people, or about owning the spotlight? Even if the legal fight never reached the scale of her other courtroom battles, it fed into a larger narrative. Bethany was quick to build brands, but not always careful with the groundwork. On paper, Be Strong has accomplished impressive feats. Media reports praised Bethany for mobilizing planes filled with aid during Hurricane Maria, and for showing up in places where relief was urgently needed. There's no denying that help reached people in need, but alongside that praise came sharp criticism. Some journalists and watchdogs accused Bethany of blurring the line between charity and self-promotion. For example, her social media updates often featured her face front and center, and critics said the charity sometimes looked like a personal brand campaign as much as a humanitarian effort. This paradox created a trust problem. For donors, questions arose. How much of this was about disaster relief, and how much about Bethany's image management? The more critics raised the issue, the more it chipped at her credibility. The impact wasn't about whether help was delivered, it was about why it was delivered, and whether donors could separate Bethany's personal PR strategy from her humanitarian claims.
Suing TikTok, the filing alleges her image and likeness have been used on the platform to sell counterfeit products. Phil Lipoff is here with that story. Phil, good morning.
Good morning to you, Whit. Frankel says she's concerned about the people being tricked into spending money on products that she is not endorsing. She also says she wants financial compensation from TikTok.
So TikTok we could do this the easy way, or we could do this the hard way.
This morning, Bethenny Frankel is suing TikTok.
The bigger issue is TikTok and the wild, wild west of social media. This is something that has to be addressed.
Accusing the social media platform of not stopping a series of scam advertisements using her videos to market counterfeit products.
In 2022, Bethany launched a high-profile lawsuit against TikTok. She alleged that the platform allowed scam advertisers to use her face and likeness without permission, tricking users into believing she endorsed shady products. Her complaint argued this wasn't just about her image, but about consumer protection. people could be defrauded because TikTok failed to block fake ads. The case underscored how celebrities constantly battle to control their image in the digital age. But here's the irony. While Bethany was suing others over misuse of her image, she herself faced multiple claims of copyright or branding misuse in the past. The contrast made critics question her consistency. The TikTok case also fit into a wider pattern, Bethany fighting battles not just in reality TV or business, but across platforms. Every new lawsuit became another headline. Instead of building a stable legacy, she was becoming known as someone constantly at war, with exes, with businesses, with platforms, and with anyone who crossed her brand. Bethenny Frankel's biggest financial victory came with the sale of her Skinny Girl cocktail brand. Tabloids at the time splashed headlines claiming she walked away with $100 million or more. That number made her look like a reality TV star who beat Wall Street at its own game. But trade reporting later suggested a different picture. The upfront payment was much smaller, with later earnings tied to sales performance. Business outlets raised doubts about whether Bethany herself had inflated the figure, or whether the gossip press simply exaggerated it and she let the narrative stand. The problem wasn't whether she made money. She clearly did. The issue was trust in her story. If Bethany positioned herself as a business genius based on a number that wasn't fully accurate, critics saw it as another case of PR spin-outweighing reality. For fans and investors, the lesson was sharp. Separating hard business facts from Bethany's public framing became more difficult. And once again, beyond courtrooms and contracts, Bethany's personality has often been her biggest weapon and her biggest liability.
And can I just talk to her directly as a woman to woman? Is it possible, Carol? Like, is it possible? This isn't very heated. Like, we're okay right now. We will call you when we need you. Okay. But if you would just come and say, can we just have... Listen!
Show me my glasses, please.
I'll replace it. We have to go back to the f***ing 70s to find this glass. Sorry.
On social media, she has posted harsh takedowns of other celebrities, offhand comments that came across as insensitive, and reality TV-style feuds that spilled into public view. Examples include viral interviews where she mocked fellow housewives, or post critics labeled tone-deaf during sensitive cultural moments. The pattern is simple. Every time she pressed post, Bethany risked alienating another group of followers. Unlike legal battles, these weren't lawsuits. They were reputation hits. Critics argued she came across as brash, vindictive, or out of touch. Supporters might defend her as outspoken, but in an era where brand partnerships depend on relatability and goodwill, these public meltdowns had real costs. Even without a judge involved, Bethany's digital footprint painted the picture of a star who couldn't resist fighting every fight, no matter the fallout. When you add it all up, custody cases, copyright claims, trademark disputes, TikTok lawsuits, one thing becomes clear: litigation has a price. Court filings mean lawyers. Lawyers mean legal bills. Beyond the money, every public case meant Bethany was spending time in hearings, meetings, and media rebuttals, not building her brand. The financial costs stacked with the reputational ones. Business partners began to weigh the risks of being linked to someone so often in the headlines for disputes. Donors to her charity asked more questions about transparency. Fans who once saw her as a clever underdog began to see her as a figure locked in endless battles. In the end, the fallout wasn't just financial. It was about lost goodwill, the one currency every public figure needs most. When we step back and connect the dots across Bethany's record, a pattern emerges. She doesn't let a story breathe without her spin. From custody filings to charity controversies, Bethany is quick to hit back, shaping the narrative in her favor. Whether it's copyright fights, TikTok lawsuits, or trademark rows, going to court often became a weapon in her arsenal, sometimes to defend her image, sometimes to silence disputes. When critics or rivals spoke up, Bethany often responded instantly, sometimes through TV interviews, sometimes on social media, escalating the conflict into a headline war. On one hand, this could be described as savvy brand defense. She understands the media cycle and refuses to surrender the spotlight. On the other hand, the sheer repetition makes it look less like strategy and more like a moral problem. An inability to accept accountability, an instinct to protect herself at all costs, even if it means weaponizing lawsuits or exploiting charity branding. The question isn't whether she won or lost each battle. The question is, did the way she fought them erode her credibility permanently? The answer becomes clearer when we look at the reaction. Bethenny's time on Real Housewives ended with fractured relationships and a reputation as someone difficult to work with.
You stole the name.
His brand is called Skinny Cow.
John.
You're a cow, I'm a girl.
John,
That's the
you're
difference.
Yeah.
Because you're so full of
What are you talking
You're
about?
just full of We came up with that idea to get, like, don't say you didn't say that. You said it. You said you're gonna take me down. I'm sick of your bullshit. I just walk in and you're like, what's been going on? You think I'm gonna tell you who I'm dating?
You know, Bethany is truly like a sniper. When she puts that red eye on your forehead, you're done.
Castmates often described her as domineering or manipulative in reunion shows and interviews. Media outlets shifted from celebrating her rags to riches story to covering her as a figure of drama, lawsuits, and controversy. Sympathy that once fueled her brand during custody battles eroded after repeated public disputes. In consumer markets, Skinny Girl faced stronger competition, while her newer ventures never carried the same credibility. Critics asked, would you trust your money or your donations to someone always in the headlines for fighting rather than delivering? The backlash wasn't overnight. It was gradual, a slow cultural distancing that left Bethany with less influence in both television and philanthropy. Bethenny Frankel's downfall wasn't a single scandal. It was a cascade of choices. Legal fights, PR spin, social meltdowns, and blurred lines between charity and self-promotion. The proven records, custody filings, copyright complaints, trademark disputes, and her own lawsuits show a public figure entangled in constant battles. Layered on top were allegations, controversies, and social posts that deepened the damage. The verdict is simple. Bethany's brand was built on being sharp, outspoken, and entrepreneurial. But the same traits, unchecked, became her undoing. What once looked like hustle now reads as entitlement. What once looked like savvy PR now feels like moral failure. The deserved downfall of Bethenny Frankel was earned. Not by one mistake, but by a repeated pattern that destroyed the very trust her empire was built on. Don't take headlines at face value. If you care about accountability, look at court dockets, legal filings, and verified reports. When celebrities blur charity with self-promotion or inflate business wins, demand transparency. Because Bethenny Frankel's rise showed the power of branding. Her downfall proves the cost when branding replaces accountability.